But what is an acorn? An acorn is the nut of the oak tree. Sometimes it is called the oak nut. Not very often, but that is one of its names. It's not just the nut of the oak tree, it's also the seed of the oak tree. And what happens is that this seed, I want to remind you, they're not actually this big, they're only about an inch long, but isn't it incredible that from that tiny seed, that tiny acorn, these huge oak trees grow? Of course, that's where we get our saying, from tiny acorns, mighty oaks grow. So how does it work? Well, what happens is the acorn loses this part, which is the cup or the cupule, and that gets discarded. And what happens? They get buried underground, and then after a while, inside this seed case, the hard seed case, there is an embryo. And the embryo starts to grow and grow until finally it splits the seed case, and what happens is it starts to sprout. And then it sends the shoot up through the ground, and so the tree begins to grow. Okay, just a little biology lesson there about acorns. Why am I telling you this? Well, it's an introduction to this story. And our story is about two old ladies who were near the end of their life about 200 years ago. And each of them had a beautiful home, and their home had a long driveway. And the homes weren't next to each other like that. I've just put them next to there so that we can see how one compares with the other. But the first old lady, she thought to herself, I want to leave something for all the descendants, for all the generations who come after me. I'm going to plant a series of acorns both sides of my driveway so that in years to come, beautiful oak trees can grow along my driveway. Now, the other old lady, she heard about this, and she was a bit competitive. So she thought, I'm going to do the same thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed the process up. So rather than just plant acorns, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the acorn, but I'm actually going to remove the seed case first so that the sprouts will happen earlier and my trees will always look bigger than the other ladies. What happened? Well, let's move on 200 years, shall we? 200 years later, here's the legacy of the first woman's efforts. What happened is a beautiful tunnel of trees, exactly as she wanted, so that everybody who drove through would be able to see and experience these lovely trees on her driveway. Well, if that's what she planted, how much bigger and better were the trees of the second lady? Shall we take a look? This is what she grew. Oh, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. Why? Because her trees never grew. Why did her trees never grow? Because she messed with the seed. You see, that seed case was very important. Even though it was going to be split and the embryo would grow through it, the seed case was necessary to protect the embryo from cold, from creatures, from mice, from worms, also from mold and from all kinds of damp. That seed case had a job to do. And even though she thought she was doing it a favour, she actually did the worst thing for it, and none of those seeds grew. Well, why am I telling you this today? Because the Bible says that the gospel of Jesus Christ is like a seed that gets planted in soil. And the seed is perfect. What God designed, as he designs all seeds, is perfect, and it's intended to grow as he wants it. But our problem is when we start to mess with things and we think, I think we can do a better job. And maybe we think to ourselves, let's take away the hard parts of the gospel so that people will receive it better. Maybe we don't really want to mention the fact that people will perish eternally if they don't receive the gospel. Maybe we don't really want to talk about the fact that people have to confess their sins and turn away from their sins and be sorry for them and take themselves off the throne of their life and put God back on the throne of their life and turn away from all kinds of sin and instead pursue a holy life. Maybe we think people won't want to hear that these days, and so we just won't mention it. But if we mess with the seed, people won't grow as God intended. We won't grow Christians. What does the Bible say? The Bible says the gospel has never changed. And the reason the gospel has never changed is because our sin has never changed. And our solution has never changed. The gospel remains the power of God unto salvation for all who believe. God is the same today, yesterday, and forever. And it's a message of hope. It might sound like, oh no, we're going to give a really hard gospel to people, but the hope is in the gospel, because when we preach the gospel as we should, then we will start to see the results that God intended.